I decided to take a week alone in a national forest. It seemed like a good idea after my breakup a few weeks ago. I was 35, a freelance writer needing to clear my head. I'd camped before, but not this deep in the woods. I thought the calm would inspire me. I set up camp by a lake surrounded by tall pines. At first it felt peaceful, maybe too peaceful. I made a fire as night fell, listening to the crackling flames and the rustling leaves. But then I heard murmurs. They came from the trees. I thought it was just my imagination. I ignored it, trying to write. Soon sleep came and I went to my tent. Around midnight I woke up with a jolt. Something felt off. My heart raced in my chest. I listened hard, and the whispers were louder now. Someone was saying my name. I told myself it was nothing. I looked outside my tent. The moon was full, and shadows danced around the trees. I didn't see anything, but I felt a chill. I crawled back into my sleeping bag and tried to calm down. The next day, I decided to explore. I hiked through the woods and found an old cabin. The door was slightly ajar and vines crept through the cracks. I pushed it open. The air was musty. Inside was a mess, and the walls had strange carvings. They looked like faces staring at me. I felt uneasy, like I wasn't alone. I found a half-burnt journal on a dusty table. It was filled with frantic writing. Someone wrote about feeling watched and hearing whispers at night. That made me shiver. I wanted to leave, but I was curious. I took the journal back to my camp. That night the whispers returned. They seemed closer, almost right outside my tent. I couldn't sleep, the noise buzzing in my ears. It felt like something was right there, watching me. I spent the next days on edge. Every sound made me jump. Was it paranoia, or was the forest playing tricks? I tried to write, but nothing came. I thought about packing up and going home. The last night I braced myself for the whispers. They were loud now, filling my mind. I covered my head with my sleeping bag, wishing for silence. Then I heard footsteps. They were soft but deliberate. I froze, my heart pounding. The footsteps stopped just outside my tent. I was terrified. I stayed quiet, listening. Then everything went still. I can't shake that night from my mind. I lay there wondering who or what was outside in the dark. The whispers had stopped. I didn't know if I should call out or remain silent. What was out there? I never found out, but I still hear those whispers sometimes. The next morning I woke to a crisp silence. The whispers were gone, but so was my sense of calm. I crawled out of my tent, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The forest felt different. It was as if the trees were holding their breath. I shrugged it off and decided I needed to move on. Maybe a long hike would help clear my mind. I packed some snacks and filled my water bottle. Before leaving the campsite, I glanced at the old journal. I hesitated, then grabbed it. I figured I might find something in it that could explain the weirdness I'd experienced. I didn't want to just abandon it. It felt wrong, like leaving a part of the past unfinished. As I trekked deeper into the woods, the sunlight filtered through the trees, but shadows danced at their edges. I felt like someone, or something, was always just out of sight. I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder. I tried to focus on the journal. Most of it was chaotic rambling, thoughts about being pursued, nightmares that felt too real. Some entries were dated years ago, but the last pages were filled with desperation, a sense of urgency that sent chills down my spine. I stopped by a stream for a break. The water sparkled and I took a sip. I opened the journal again, searching for anything that might give me a clue. But then I noticed something strange. There was a crude map sketched on one of the blank pages. It marked a location not far from my campsite with an X drawn over it. Intrigued, I traced the lines with my finger. The map showed old trails that seemed overgrown now. I couldn't shake the feeling that this map led to something important. Maybe it was just another one of the author's wild fantasies. But my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to follow the map. The path was hard to find, and I stumbled through bushes and underbrush. After what felt like an eternity, I arrived at the marked spot, a clearing surrounded by towering trees. The air was dense, as if the place held its breath in anticipation. Suddenly, I felt it again, the whispers. They swelled in my ears, growing louder, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I looked around, desperate to find their source. That's when I saw it, an old weathered stone altar covered in moss. My heart sank. It was similar to the carvings in the cabin. Faces stared back at me from the stone, their expressions twisted in agony. It felt like they were warning me to leave, but I was frozen in place. I wanted to turn and run, but something compelled me to step closer. I could almost hear my name being called again, more urgent this time. My mind raced. What was happening? The journal, the altar, the whispers. They all felt connected. And then everything went dark. A shadow moved behind me and I turned, but there was nothing. Just emptiness and silence. I made a decision. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let whatever was lurking in the forest consume me too. With one last glance at the stone altar, I dashed back toward the path I came from, heart pounding, gasping for breath. I could still feel the whispers trailing behind me, but I was determined to put distance between us. The urgency clawed at my back. Would I make it to camp, or was the forest going to keep its secrets? I ran through the trees, branches slapping my arms as I pushed forward. The whispers followed, a haunting melody that taunted me. I tore through the underbrush, focused only on escape. My mind raced with questions. What had I stumbled upon? Why did that altar feel so familiar? I finally broke free from the thick coverage of trees and saw my campsite in the distance. Relief flooded my senses, but it was short-lived. The quiet around me felt wrong. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were absent. I scanned the area, half expecting something to leap out at me. I stumbled toward my tent, heart racing. I needed to think, I needed to figure out what to do next. I pulled out the journal and opened it again, hoping for answers. But the pages blurred together in my hands, my fingers trembling. The last entries were chaotic, mentioning something about a convergence, a point where different realms met. Suddenly I noticed something on the ground at my tent. A dark figure loomed nearby. My heart stopped. I stepped back, squinting into the shadows. It moved, and I caught a glimpse of something like a face, twisted and searching. Panic surged through me, and I bolted toward the clearing again, desperate to escape. I had to get away from whatever was watching me. I could still hear the whispers, but they now sounded frantic, as if urging me to hurry. I reached the altar again, its presence ominous and overwhelming. I could feel my breath quickening, panic clawing at my throat. There had to be a reason I was drawn back here. The map. I thumbed through the journal, flipping past the ramblings until I found the map again. It felt like a clue, a key to understanding what was happening. I had to reposition it in relation to the altar. As I held it up to examine the markings, something flickered in my peripheral vision. I turned, heart racing. The shadow was there again, just outside of the clearing, waiting. I couldn't tell how many there were, I just knew they were watching. The whispers grew louder, angry now, mingling with my fear. I felt a tightness in my chest. This was wrong. I was in their space. I needed to decide quickly. Either I ran, facing whatever lurked in the shadows, or I looked for a way to confront this horror head-on. But the journal kept calling me back, the pages writhing with the urgency of its contents. I felt like a moth drawn toward a flame. With a deep breath, I stepped toward the altar, clutching the journal tightly. I whispered a plea into the space around me. "What do you want from me?" The moment I spoke, the shadows started to converge. I could feel their energy swirling, and dread washed over me. I didn't have much time. But then I noticed the altar glowing faintly, a warm light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I took another step forward, curiosity overcoming my fear. That's when the air shifted and someone, began to emerge from the altar's depths. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I was rooted to the spot. The whispers faded into silence, and an eerie calm settled. I had uncovered something dangerous, and now it was revealing itself. The figure materialized slowly, slipping from the light of the altar. It was tall and thin, its features obscured by shadows, but I could make out a face, pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. I stood frozen, panic and curiosity wrestling for control. "Help me," it whispered, the words barely a breath. But its voice resonated deep within me, sending a shiver up my spine. I wanted to respond, to ask what it needed, but only silence fell between us. Then the shadows behind it writhed, coiling around the figure like smoke. The whispers rose again, louder now, a cacophony of voices that filled the space around us. They sounded desperate and angry, echoing thoughts I couldn't fully grasp. My heart hammered against my ribcage. The figure reached out with elongated fingers, beckoning me closer. "You have to understand," it said. The voice carried an otherworldly quality, but there was a tinge of fear in it too. I felt a smile fight its way to my lips, a reflex to ease the tension. But no amount of humor could dispel the nightmare atmosphere surrounding me. I fought against the instinct to bolt. "Understand what?" I finally managed to croak. My voice sounded small. "The convergence," it said, voice cracking. "The altar binds us, it reveals the truths hidden in the forest, but it also awakens those who should remain asleep." I glanced at the journal in my hand, its pages fluttering in the unseen wind. "What do I have to do?" "Close the rift," the figure replied, urgency rising in its tone. "Only you can stop them, before they consume you." A thrill of terror coursed through me. Stop what? The shadows began to swirl faster, their relentless whispers merging into a singular, deafening roar. I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my thoughts. Then everything shifted again. The glow of the altar flickered violently, casting erratic shadows across the clearing. I turned to see the dark figures phasing in and out of the light, their forms shifting, merging with the darkness around me. They were closing in. "Choose now!" the figure cried out, its face twisted with desperation. "You need to make a choice, run or fight." Before I could think, the altar emitted a blinding pulse of light, and my vision flashed white. I stumbled back, clutching my head. The shadows hissed and recoiled, but I wasn't sure if it was fear or excitement that coursed through them. As I stepped back, the journal slipped from my fingers and landed on the ground. My breath hitched. The map was facing up, and I spotted a previously unnoticed marking, a symbol that resembled the altar itself. I knelt and traced the contours with my finger, but as I did, the dark figure wailed, "You have to repair the bond. You cannot let them break through." The ground trembled beneath me, a vibrating pulse that echoed the thumping in my chest. The shadows advanced and the figure's form flickered. I needed to act fast. That's when I saw it. A storm of darkness surging behind the figure, preparing to break free. I could feel a surge of anger and fear in the air, and I realized I was out of time. I grabbed the journal and shouted, "I'll stop them!" But as I did, the shadows surged forward, swallowing the figure whole. Its terrified eyes locked onto mine just as its scream faded into a suffocating silence. Everything went dark. I gasped, my hands pressing against the cold ground. It felt real and gritty under my fingers. Slowly, I opened my eyes. Darkness surrounded me, thick and stifling, as if the forest itself had come alive and closed in. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. I was still near the altar, but something felt different. The shadows lingered, swirling just beyond my vision, but the figure had vanished. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves and my own ragged breathing. I remembered the journal. Its pages held answers, maybe even a way to close the rift. I fumbled through the thick darkness until I found it lying under a few fallen leaves. My fingers traced the edges, feeling the weight of the mystery in it. Once I opened it, the words glimmered faintly in the dim light. Strange symbols littered the pages. I flipped furiously, searching for that map, praying it would reveal more. My mind raced. What did the figure mean by repairing the bond? Then I stopped. There, drawn sharply on a new page, was a depiction of the altar, but it was encircled by lines radiating outwards. It looked like a web, intricate and complex, with other symbols connected to it. Symbols like the ones I saw in my visions. A sudden realization hit me. I had to find the other symbols. They had to be out there, throughout the forest. But where? I bit my lip, anxiety twisting my stomach. The whispers danced on the edge of my hearing. They sounded angry, restless. I could feel the pull of the shadows, a desperate craving for something dark and powerful. I glanced up, and a chill crept down my spine. They were gathering again, swirling at the edges of the clearing, drawn to me. I couldn't stay here. I needed a plan, a way to find the symbols and confront whatever was lurking in the darkness. The journal became an anchor in my hand, a reminder that I wasn't completely alone. "Okay," I whispered to myself, trying to muster courage. Find the symbols. I would have to search the woods, even if it felt insane. No turning back now. Just as I turned to leave, I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. A shadow darted behind the trees, too swift for me to catch. My heart clenched in fear. Someone, or something, was watching me. The urgency flooded back. I couldn't waste time. I needed to take the first step. Gathering my resolve, I stepped into the trees, determined to follow the whispers, to find the truth hidden in the shadows. Each step felt heavy, and my instincts screamed at me to turn back. But I pressed on, driven by a mix of dread and curiosity. I was about to uncover something that had long been buried, and I couldn't shake the feeling it would lead to either my salvation or my doom. That's when I stumbled upon a clearing. It looked almost like the altar, but something was off. A similar symbol marked the ground, glowing faintly in the darkness. I knelt down, heart racing again, as I tried to decipher what it meant. Then I heard it. A voice, soft yet demanding. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, my blood running cold. Someone was there, hidden in the shadows. I wasn't alone after all. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The forest felt alive, breathing all around me, and I could almost hear its heartbeat mingling with my own. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Just when I thought I might have imagined the voice, a figure stepped out into the faint light of the symbol. I squinted, trying to make sense of the shape in front of me. It was a person, tall, cloaked in dark fabric, their face hidden beneath a hood. "Leave this place," the figure said, their voice low and commanding. "You do not understand what you are meddling with." My throat felt dry. "I'm not leaving until I find the symbols. They're important." The words tumbled out, probably more bravely than I felt. I needed to show I wasn't afraid, but the truth was, panic was clawing at me. "You think you can fix it?" The figure stepped closer, and I felt a jolt of fear. "You have no idea what you're up against." There was a flicker of something in the air, a shift that made the shadows around me dance with renewed life. I could see faint sparks of light in their eyes. It chilled me to the bone. "What do you know?" I exclaimed, frustration bubbling up in me. "I have to try. I need to understand what the bond means." The figure paused, as if weighing my words. "There are forces at play you cannot begin to comprehend," they said finally, their tone growing softer. "The symbols you seek are not mere markings. They lead to a power that can destroy or corrupt." "Then help me," I blurted out. "I can't do this alone." A strange silence fell. The figure hesitated, studying me. I could see something flicker behind the hood, a moment of conflict. "Do you really think you can fix what has been broken?" "I have to try," I insisted. "You don't know me, but I feel it. The pull of the forest. It's calling out for help." "Very well," they said at last. "But know this. Seeking these symbols could unleash horrors you cannot imagine." Their voice dropped, betraying a hint of something. A memory? A regret? I didn't dare ask. "Show me," I said, newfound determination flooding my veins. Without another word, the figure turned and began to walk deeper into the forest. I followed hesitantly, keeping a few steps behind. The air grew colder as we moved further away from the clearing. The shadows thickened, seeming to pulse with a life of their own. As we approached another hidden clearing, the figure suddenly stopped. "Here," they said, gesturing towards the ground. Another symbol glowed faintly, but I could see now that it was different, more intricate. "What does it mean?" I asked, kneeling down to examine it closely. "It is a warning," they said softly, their eyes scanning the trees around us as if expecting something. an invitation for darkness to enter. What do you mean? I felt a chill creep up my spine. Then, without warning, I heard it, a faint rustling sound coming from behind the trees, followed by whispers, angry and desperate. I looked up at the figure, fear gripping my throat. "Run," they commanded, urgency in their voice. But there was nowhere to go. Before I could react, shadows erupted from the underbrush, dark tendrils that snaked toward me. I felt the heat of their rage, an overwhelming force. I took a step back, my breath hitching. That was when I noticed the figure was no longer beside me. They had vanished, swallowed whole by the darkness, leaving me alone to face the encroaching shadows. And in that moment I realized I might have just unleashed something far more dangerous than I ever anticipated. I stumbled backward, the darkness swirling around me like a living creature. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of tormented voices that split the air. Fear shot up my spine, urging me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Panic surged as the tendrils approached, brushing against my skin like 1,000 icy fingers. The shadows twisted and curled, searching for something. Me. I forced myself to think, heart racing. This wasn't just an ordinary dark. It was alive, feeding off fear, or maybe it was fear itself. Just then a flash of movement caught my eye. A deer, or something like it, darted through the trees nearby, panicked and wild. It collided with a thicket, shaking the branches, and the shadows hesitated as if considering its presence. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light from within the underbrush where the creature had disappeared. It drew my attention, a beacon in the storm of darkness. With a sudden burst of determination, I turned and sprinted towards the glow. The whispers howled behind me, but I pushed them out of my mind. I could only focus on that light, hoping against hope that it would lead me to safety. As I dashed through the tangled branches, I could feel the air shift. The oppressive weight of the shadows seemed to follow me, but the glow grew more intense the closer I got. It pulsated like a heartbeat, steady and inviting. I burst into a small clearing, my heart racing. The light sprang from a crystal-like formation protruding from the ground, shimmering with all the colors of the forest. It felt warm, almost comforting, unlike the cold tendrils that had chased me moments before. I knelt before it, my breath heaving as I took in the sight. Was this another symbol? I reached out, hesitantly placing my fingers against its surface. As soon as I made contact, a shock of energy surged through me, unlike anything I had ever felt. Images flashed in my mind, visions of the forest, the symbols, and the cloaked figure. But there was something else, images of destruction, chaos, and the shadows I had just encountered. I pulled my hand back, shaken. The glowing formation was more than just a symbol. It was a connection, a way to harness the power of the forest. But at what cost? Suddenly I felt a pull, something trying to drag me back into the darkness. I looked around, breath caught in my throat. The shadows were closing in again, thicker and angrier than before. My heart raced as I realized I had to make a choice. Stay and explore this power or flee into the unknown. Then everything went dark. A blinding pain shot through me, and I stumbled, falling to the forest floor as the shadows enveloped me. The whispers grew deafening, drowning out my thoughts. I was losing the battle against them, pulled into a void where fear was the only companion. But as despair threatened to take hold, a glimmer of hope persisted, the memory of the light, the connection I had felt. I had to find a way to tap into that energy, to use it against the shadows. "Help me," I cried out, but the sound felt swallowed by the darkness. I scrambled, clawing at the ground, searching for the crystal. If I could just reach it again, maybe I could turn the tide. Then, amidst the chaos, I heard a whisper that sounded like a name. Mine. I wasn't alone. With that thought, I summoned every ounce of strength I had left. It was time to fight back. My vision returned slowly, like a fog lifting. Shadows still swirled around me but flickered at the edges of my consciousness. The air was thick, heavy with an unsettling tension. I was still on the ground, my fingers digging into the earth, seeking purchase, hope, anything. "Focus," I whispered to myself, shaking off the lingering haze. The crystal had shown me a way if I could just find it again. I pushed myself to my knees, scanning the clearing. The light flickered in my memory but was nowhere in sight. The whispers surged again, accusing and twisted. Each voice felt distinct, each murmur dripping with dread. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block them out, but they only grew louder. "Find the light," I muttered, my only anchor amidst the chaos. I pulled myself up, heart racing, and turned in circles, desperate to catch sight of the guiding crystal. The shadows darted toward me with a familiar intent, their cold tendrils wrapping tighter around my legs. I stumbled, willing myself to breathe through the panic, and that's when I heard it again, a voice softer this time. "Behind you." Spun around and froze. There, emerging from the dense underbrush, was the cloaked figure I had seen before. The dark fabric clung to it like a second skin, and the hood obscured its face. I was filled with dread, yet curiosity pulled me forward. "Who are you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure remained still, like a statue frozen in time. "You seek the light," it said, voice calm yet unsettling. Just hearing it sparkled something in me, a memory I couldn't quite grasp. "But the darkness is your true enemy." "What do you mean?" I demanded. "Where is the crystal?" The figure pointed behind me. I turned and found it, the crystal brighter than I had remembered. The air shimmered around it, a beacon in the shadowy realm. But as I took a step toward it, the surroundings changed. The forest twisted and shifted, as if it was alive and responding to my movements. The ground beneath me trembled, splintering, as the shadows lunged forward. "Protect yourself or be consumed," the cloaked figure warned, voice slicing through the whispers. I glanced back at it, uncertainty flooding my mind. Was it friend or foe? With a surge of energy, I threw myself toward the crystal. It pulsed in rhythm with my racing heart. As I touched it, a wave of warmth washed over me, banishing the chills that gripped my spine. The shadows recoiled, their anguished cries a sharp contrast to the light. The visions returned, but now they weren't just chaotic images of destruction. They intertwined with scenes of bravery, of defiance against those very shadows. I felt a power humming within me, echoing the strength of the forest. I could fight. "Use it!" the figure shouted, though it felt distant, blurred by the overwhelming rush of energy filling my veins. But just as I felt ready to wield this newfound strength, the darkness surged again, more aggressive than before. The shadows began to twist into forms, vague figures of despair, reaching for me with clawed hands. I hesitated. The fight wasn't just against the shadows around me. It was within myself. They wanted to consume my fear, my doubt, and I could feel them testing my resolve. "Stand firm," the figure shouted, and I took a deep breath, preparing for whatever came next. I realized then that my fight would not only be against them, but also the shadows that lingered in my mind. With the crystal guiding me, I would learn to reclaim what was lost. It was time to confront the darkness within me. Then I felt a presence behind me, something larger, something even more sinister emerging from the depths. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The shadows had brought something worse. The figure took shape in the dim light, its form more solid and grotesque than the shadows that surrounded me. It towered, a looming specter with shifting features that flickered like flames. My breath caught as I recognized it, the embodiment of my deepest fears lurking just beyond the veil of my sanity. "Do you recognize me?" it whispered, the voice a twisted echo of my own. Instinctively, I took a step back, but the crystal urged me forward, filling me with a reluctant courage. I needed to fight. "I am the darkness that lives in you," it said, its voice draped in ridicule. "You cannot escape me." The claws stretched toward me, glimmering with anticipation. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. "No," I shouted, bracing myself. I felt the pulse of the crystal quicken in my hand, a rhythm syncing with my racing heart. I couldn't let it control me. I had come too far to turn back. "You don't own me." The air trembled as my words filled the clearing, the shadows above me writhing with an anguished roar. A sudden burst of energy surged from the crystal, radiating light that pushed back against the looming figure. "Use the light," the cloaked figure's voice urged from the edge of my awareness. With that, I took a step forward, raising the crystal as if it were a weapon. The light erupted, bright and blinding, washing over everything. The shadowy figure grimaced, its features twisting, contorting in the stark brilliance. But before I could follow through with an attack, the darkness reacted. A wave of despair crashing over me. Images flooded my mind. Past failures, grief, moments I wished to forget. They stung like hidden daggers, pulling me down, reminding me of my weaknesses. "Embrace what you fear," the cloaked figure shouted. "Face it." "Shut up," I yelled, shaking my head, but tears streamed down my face. The crystal trembled in my grasp. I wanted to turn away, to hide from the pain. But that wasn't the point. I needed to release it, not just fight it. Breathe. I needed to breathe. I focused on the warmth of the crystal guiding me. A memory surfaced, my mother's laughter, her words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," she would say. I clung to that image amid the swirling despair. With a deep breath, I pushed back, embracing the darkness, accepting it. "I am not afraid," my voice rang clear. Suddenly the air hummed and crackled with energy. The shadows recoiled, twisting away as if the light were poison. A crack split the ground beneath my feet, revealing a chasm where the tendrils of darkness writhed. The creature let out a horrid shriek, its form dissolving back into the shadows, retreating into its depths. But just as relief washed over me, the ground shook violently and I lost my balance. I stumbled, the crystal slipping from my hands and landing just out of reach. A dark vortex opened where the shadow had vanished, the air around it swirling with unseen forces. I stared at the chasm as a cold dread rushed back through me. Something else was coming. "Get the crystal," the cloaked figure urged, but amplifying dread filled my chest. "Hurry!" The shadows surged again, attempting to drag me down, but I couldn't yield. I had fought enough to know one thing for certain. The battle wasn't over. Just as I lunged for the crystal, the vortex roared and something far worse, both relentless and familiar, began to emerge from its depths. I wasn't prepared for what would come next. I dove for the crystal, fingers brushing against its cool surface, my heart pounding against my ribs. In that moment, everything felt suspended, an electric connection between the light and the turmoil surrounding me. The shadows were thrashing with fury, and I could sense a darker presence lurking just beyond the surface. Grabbing the crystal with both hands, I heaved myself upright and turned to face the vortex. What emerged wasn't just an echo of my deepest fears. It was a monstrous apparition, coalescing from the swirling darkness. It held the shape of the figure I had fought earlier, a twisted parody of everything I had encountered, combined with the anguish of the whispers that had plagued my nights. "Do you really think you can defeat me?" it hissed, voice layered with every torment I had ever felt. The bitterness seeped into my bones, threatening to overwhelm me. I raised the crystal, feeling the energy within it pulse fiercely, a heartbeat of defiance thrumming against the dread coiling in my chest. "I have to try," I shouted back, surprised at my own resolve. With a surge of energy, I thrust the crystal towards the apparition, the warmth radiating outward like sunlight breaking through fog. The dark figure lunged, but the light pushed against it, creating a barrier where shadows couldn't pass. I could feel the pull of fear clawing at my mind, but I focused, channeling everything I had, the balance of light and darkness within me. The apparition howled, its form twisting violently. It felt intimately aware of every choice I had made. Every regret bubbled to the surface. "You cannot outrun me," it raged, hurling fragments of my past in my direction, images of failure, heartbreak. But I stood firm. "You're wrong," I declared, clutching the crystal tighter. "I am not defined by you." With those words, the light intensified, illuminating the clearing as if a new dawn had come. The brightness surged through me, washing away the shadows that had settled deep within my soul. The vortex quaked, shadows swirling around it in chaos. They writhed like a creature in pain, and I sensed their desperation, "You don't have to do this," I shouted, sensing a moment of clarity amongst the darkness. "This is a part of me I can't deny, but I will not be devoured." The dark figure hesitated, its eyes widening as the light spread from the crystal, illuminating the designs embroidered in the shadows. It wasn't just sending the darkness away. It was rewriting the very fabric of what I feared, transforming despair into something bearer. Not a burden, but a lesson. I stepped forward, determined now to face this manifestation of my life's struggles head-on. As I moved, tendrils of darkness recoiled, drawn away from my presence. "You're a reflection of my own pain," I said softly, my voice steady but fierce. "But you're also an opportunity. I can change." With a final cry, I flung the crystal directly at the dark figure. The moment it made contact, a blinding flash erupted, engulfing everything in a radiance that felt like freedom itself. The shadows shrieked and faded, consumed by the brilliance and exploding like mist under the sun. All at once, the screams gave way to a haunting, echoing silence that filled the space. I was thrown back, the force of the backlash knocking me to the ground. When the light simmered down and the shadows had cleared, a heavy stillness remained. I lay there, trembling, watching the remnants of swirling darkness retreat into the trees, as if the forest itself had learned a much-needed lesson. I pushed myself up, gasping for breath. The world felt strangely serene now, almost lighter, and the cloaked figure, it was gone, yet a sense of understanding weighed heavily in its absence. Had I truly emerged victorious? I glanced around, wondering if the shadows would return. What lay beneath the surface of this forest remained a mystery, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disturbed something ancient. I looked down at the crystal in my hand, now dulled and ordinary. Just a stone. I took a deep breath and stood, wiping the dirt from my knees, feeling a deep sense of weariness settle in my bones. The battle was over, but not the exploration. As I turned to leave the clearing, my heartbeat slowed, yet I couldn't shake the whispers inside me, or the sense of eyes watching from the shadows. There were wounds that would take time to heal, things to understand, and parts of myself that I had yet to confront. I stepped softly back into the woods, choosing my path with tentative hope. The forest was alive with sounds again, but among them, amidst all the murmurs, the voices seemed to beckon me in different ways, both sinister and gentle. A part of me felt the urge to delve deeper, to explore why this place had such a hold on me. I could sense that even as I fled the shadows, my connection to this forest wasn't completely severed. I paused once more, half glancing back over my shoulder, a mix of trepidation and excitement coursing through me. "I'll be back," I whispered into the soft wind, the forest echoing my words. The next chapter awaited, both in the trees and within me, shrouded in the delicate balance of shadow and light.